Voices shouting, screaming in defeat. Politicians playing games under darkened skies. Hope lost in the dust of the street. Red and blue, colors pouring from the sky. Debates turn to anger, the crowd gets loud. Punches flying in the blink of an eye. Truth buried deep beneath the shroud. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive. Faces on the screen, flashing perfect teeth. But behind those eyes, just rotting greed. Politicians turn to whispers beneath. They all just get what they need. Whispering conspiracies, drowning in their lies. Echoes of freedom, lost in cries. Spin the wheel of fate, let's see who rise. But this game will bleed you dry. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive.
All right. Welcome to the bullpen. Ned Brahma is having audio difficulties, so he'll be hopping right back in. Hopefully, you enjoy the starting scene because that's what does it to him every week.
Every freaking week.
Every week. But we've had man. Does it seem like I went to college, majored in political science, did all this stuff. So clearly, I've liked politics my whole life. We have been at warp speed this election season since that debate. Basically,
Since the debate, since the assassination that nobody seems to recall.
But I can sort of get a little bit about the assassination being moved on so fast because we've had so many things.
Yeah, they've done a great job of memory holding everything.
Every week we manage to have seismic things coming out. This week, we've had Kamala for the first time as the nominee, giving an agenda item speech, and it went as horrible as you would have expected. So,
Yeah. Hey, we're saying the commie part out loud.
yep.
We're just going to, flat out come out and say, let's do some price controls. Let's see if we can get some breadlines in this country. It's good for everybody, right?
It was funny because Slender and I were chatting, and he sent me a message because after the economic plan got announced, he did a whole long breakdown about all the expensive stuff. He was using eggs as the example. He was like, eggs used to cost $2 a carton because it did this, and he did a whole thing. And he's like, now you're paying $8 a carton, and he did this whole thing. So my response was, "What do you mean, comrade? Eggs have always been $8 a carton."
Yeah. Let's just make believe. We'll pretend.
Yep, that's what's gonna What do you mean? So to jump right into, because I think Kamala's economic speech, we've got the background, our thumbnail. It's a clown show with empty shelves as the forthcoming end.
And trust us, we did not try to make her look good. That's all AI trying to pretty her up, because we all know she's far uglier than that.
Yeah, but it's hilarious. Like her main two proposals was $25,000 in down payment support to people buying a home. So by anybody,
First
that
time home
means
buyers, I think.
that's and there's no restriction on if you're an American citizen or not. So bear that in mind too. This is for any home buyer. That's a first time home buyer. So if you're coming, if you're here on asylum, you would qualify under Kamala's plan.
So congratulations. If you own a home,
It's worth
your
twenty five
valuation
thousand
just
more.
went up by 25,000.
And I saw people like they were rightly making that point on even on CNN. Some people were like, "Well, home prices are just going to go up 25,000," and you could tell the economic illiterate people because like, no, it wouldn't do that. They won't know who qualifies. And I was like, I hate, yeah,
It doesn't matter who
it doesn't
qualifies. You're
matter.
going to raise the price by 25,000 no matter what.
Because somebody who's going to be looking at your house will qualify.
Yeah.
So if they're going to compete in the market, it's not even something that hasn't happened under the Biden administration. The Biden Green New Deal that they slipped into their Inflation Reduction Act included, I think it was $8,000 in tax credits or 10,000. It was like 8 to 10,000 in credits for buying an electric vehicle.
Right.
And as soon as it passed and they put out the list of qualifying electric vehicles, Ford, GM, and all of them raised those car prices by shockingly right around $10,000.
Yeah. Because automatically the battery costs more.
Yep. So
Yeah. And the thing is, it's just Democrats offering another giveaway in their, communist ideals. The real fix for this is not giving people 25,000 to buy a home. The real fix is getting the Fed to lower interest rates after we've gotten inflation under control, which is what Donald Trump is proposing. Is we get the economy back under control, we drill baby drill, we do everything we can to become net exporters of energy again. You bring the economy back in line, and then the interest rates will fall, which is what actually makes people able to afford a home. Not giving them 25,000 to put towards a down payment on a house. That's insane.
all right, so Eric's got a all right. So he brings this. I'm not opposed to home buying assistance from the populist standpoint, but I'm not sure at how it happens without raising prices across the board. We already have good programs for this called the FHA Mortgage Assistance Program. It's not mortgage assistance; it's your first time home buyer, where you
Yeah.
only have to put 5% down. Like
You
you
don't have to
only
put the usual
you,
20%
yeah, you
down.
don't have to put the 20% down, and you still have a mortgage for the full sale price of the house. What happens is you also end up paying what's called private mortgage insurance because you didn't
Yeah.
put the full down payment. It means if you end up getting foreclosed on, the private mortgage insurance covers the cost of your mortgage to the lending institution that is underwriting the mortgage.
Commonly known as PMI.
Yeah. Yep. Now, and which is also tax deductible. Ding, ding, ding. If you were because the bear in mind they want to take away the tax credits that Trump gave all of America, which super simplified taxes for pretty much 90% of the population, where the standard deduction for a married family is $26,000. That's
Plus the
gonna
child tax credit.
plus the child's tax credit. For instance, for me, instead of spending hours doing my taxes like I used to when I was deducting my mortgage and doing all the rest, with the standard deductions going up to 26, bam, I can do my taxes in like 40 minutes and be done.
Yeah, you don't have to try to find every little deduction there. I mean, you've basically got charity that you may have done through the year, like taking things to Goodwill, and those credits offsets whatever percentage, and boom, your taxes are done.
Yeah, bride's got there's no such thing as a free. It's someone's paying for it. Yeah, I mean, and here's another point, Eric. Deportation would lower the cost of housing because if you're in a market and you take away demand, supply, if it stays the same, will still reduce in cost because there's less demand. The amount of people we've had influxing into the country, has risen demand for housing and makes the prices go up, keeps them artificially up. Because as Brahma mentioned, when the interest rates went up, historically, what should have happened is home prices should have dropped
Right.
15 to 20%. They instead still kept going up. Why is that?
We're still in a seller's market.
Because we still have demand. Now it takes longer to sell a house than it did, but they're still selling at that price, the inflated price.
And a lot of that is people desperately trying to get out of Democrat controlled states. You're
Yeah.
seeing mass migration from New York and from California. And those people will go in and just pay whatever for the house because the cost of living is so high in those states that when you go to a Colorado or a Texas or a Florida, you can buy 4 times the house that you had or 4 times the condo you had in those states with what the proceeds from the sale of your place where you were coming from.
So, AD Victorium, I'm surprised at how negative the media has been about Kamala's economic plan. Is there something happening behind the scenes? This is where we're interesting. We've had a situation where they did a virtual roll call to nominate her, but the convention is still actually this upcoming week.
yeah.
So there's still the possibility of pulling shenanigans because the convention has all the apparatuses to do nominating. And if you're Obama and you've been carefully curating Kamala for 3-4 weeks now, and you're seeing that her honeymoon is over, the polls have normalized back to where they were, and in fact, the reaction to like her idea for economic solutions was to do exactly what Biden had proposed earlier, except with a little bit more money that was already falling very flat. You could still, I mean, you could pull the emergency shoot at the convention and get rid of her at this point. It's still on the table.
So you're saying we could still get Hillary?
I'm saying that it could be like, this could be for the good of the party, for the good of the nation. I have to take over.
Right, which is exactly what they did to Biden.
Not to mention, there's always the possibility that the person flying the plane that's going to take Kamala to the convention has information on the Clintons, and therefore it crashes en route. Because have you ever done the math on how many people within the Clinton orbit have died or committed suicide? It is like the average person might know one person who dies in a homicide, maybe one person who commits suicide in their entire life. But
When
the
you know
volume,
87 of your closest friends have done it or
yeah.
had it done to them, it's a little bit weird.
Yeah, this was interesting. The Washington Post came out hard. Hard. Now, here's something that would make sense, though. I'm not sure this is as quite as hard to figure out as possible. Like, who owns the Washington Post? Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
Where does Jeff Bezos make his money? Amazon.
Amazon.
If price controls were enacted, who's a company that might be really negatively impacted? Amazon.
Yep.
So I sometimes you can do Occam's razor, where instead of trying to figure out all these 4-dimensional chess moves on why the Washington Post is doing it, it's as simple as the owner of the newspaper makes his money selling groceries online and products that would be subject to price controls, and the profit margins on those items is actually not very high. You make it up in volume.
Yeah.
So if you get price controls, it's going to hurt Amazon. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the honeymoon is over with her. She's managed to make it without doing an interview up to this point, which means she will get through without an interview until the end of the DNC. We've got that going on this week. If anything crazy happens, of course, we'll end up covering it. And we may just cover her speech either way.
I do think the fact that there's allegedly permits for 30 to 50,000 people protests,
Yeah.
and if you've looked at the way Chicago's preparing, at least the business owners who are on the ground are considering this to be like, LA riots level.
Well, the pro-Palestine wing of the Democrats is going to show up and just destroy everything, I think.
Yeah, that's an interesting. Trump also mentioned he talked with Bezos recently. Maybe a move could be.
Well,
Look,
big
I,
tech is definitely getting behind Trump this go around because they see what it's done economically to have Biden in office for 4 years and by extension Kamala.
yeah, I mean, th- here's the other thing. They passed that as again part of the Green New Deal that was tucked into the Inflation Reduction Act. They passed a lot of broadband access and all these things that big tech people thought would open up all these new rural markets for them. Who, by the way, was in charge of that? Kamala. Biden put her in charge of like getting that done. So we've spent, I think it's over $50 billion of that money, and we have not added one user to broadband internet. Not one.
Shocking.
They haven't even they talk about shovel ready. They haven't even put a shovel in the dirt on one project to start bringing access. And that's because the Biden people are so cronyistic that they immediately changed the definition of broadband internet to specifically not allow like satellite based ones, so Starlink.
Starlink.
Basically, the only internet stuff that qualifies is fiber optic, and the biggest players in fiber optic internet broadband service are Comcast and Verizon. And then you've got small like little companies that will put things up randomly, but they're not the ones bidding on these government contracts. Basically you're going to have Comcast and you're going to have Verizon getting these things.
Yeah, the only users that have been added over the past couple of years are all of Ukraine getting on
Yep.
Starlink because Musk is basically offering it for free during this conflict.
Yep. Eric's right. You could have just gone to Best Buy and bought a bunch of Starlinks and had rural areas on broadband. Yep. Southern Bell, yeah, they were also going to put in all these EV charging stations, and they've built seven.
Yeah,
As Elon Musk has made a deal, he's got Tesla superchargers out everywhere. One of the things he does, if you've got a Sheets gas station near you, he made a deal like every new Sheets gas station that gets built has a row of Tesla superchargers there,
yeah,
which is why GM and Ford basically threw in the towel earlier this year and said they're getting on the basically the same protocols for
same
charging
charger. Yeah,
so that they can use the Tesla ones. So because they've given like they're like, look, this is the only game in town actually building charging infrastructure. So we're just going to start using the Tesla system, which is another way Elon is going to make money from his competitors, even if like this is fun. Like when Elon goes out there and promotes electric cars, he doesn't just make money if Tesla sells them now. He's going to
right.
make money because he's going to charge a fee for everyone who's not a Tesla user plugging into the superchargers.
Well, it's kind of like HD DVD versus Blu-ray. We're seeing who's winning out in this battle, and it's definitely Tesla.
Yeah. Now that is where I think Elon has a blind spot because he is also pro carbon tax and some of those things, and that's he makes his money mostly through Tesla. So
Yeah, I mean,
he wants a like no, he should be promoting the all of the above. I know he is a proponent of nuclear though, so that's good.
yes, we got that from the talk between Elon and Trump, which is another thing that happened this week or this past week.
It was, and I think over like 752,000 to a million live listeners.
There was 1.3 million live when I was in it,
Yeah, and
and
then
there's over a billion views
billion views.
total.
And this is where I disagree with people who are being very negative on Trump's campaign at the moment because they're saying like you're going out and doing things with like Aiden and you're doing things with Elon on Twitter. He's reaching people in
Yeah.
like by volume, orders of magnitude. It's like so,
Well,
you
the
know,
media won't talk to him. they refuse to put him on unless it's to mock him. So you've got to go somewhere to get your message out. I mean, sure, we've had JD Vance making the rounds, and he's done a fantastic job. But as much as the media refuses to call Kamala in to actually say anything, they refuse to give any airtime to Trump. They know what happened in 2016 when they did that. Because remember, CNN was boosting Trump in 2016. And they feel like they are the ones who screwed everything up by getting him elected.
It saved their network though, because they did that was by doing that they actually got ratings and got advertising revenue. It was,
it was great for them at that point. And then they immediately turned on him and became the network of no Trump as soon as he got elected, and that gave them ratings. So, but nobody's doing it this go around, so he has to find outlets to be able to put out something. I mean, he even did the golf match with Bryson DeChambeau on YouTube,
and that was again viewed by hundreds of millions.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen that, you should go watch that later today, because it was a very interesting look into Trump as like a person, kind of like the Elon Musk thing. It wasn't just the politician Trump, it was the personal Trump.
By the way, I guess we definitely, after watching that view of him doing his 18 with them, yeah, Biden would have got toasted. So I don't know if that, I don't think he'll
from
ever,
the line from the debate.
Like,
yeah,
like I'll just like I think that's what I mean. If Trump's like, I'll trash talk you on golf, bitch. Like you can't even, touch me.
Trump backed it up in that video. His swing may be absolutely hideous. I mean, but it's an old man swing, but he's still driving the ball 200 yards.
So Silver, this is something Trump actually has to say outlandish things to actually get coverage. It's like what Braun was saying. They don't cover when he says just normal things. A good example of that is after the price controls and policy was announced, Trump went out and did a press conference at Bedminster, and it was very normal. It was actually very even keeled by Trump standards. He was sticking purely to policy, talking about how terrible the prices were and, inflation and all these other things. And no one covered it. It was boring, right? It didn't generate the headline.
He's got to stop rambling, though. I mean, they need to keep him on a tight leash on how long he goes on some of these things, because that is where people do get bored listening to Trump, because he'll talk for 2.5 hours just because. So, I mean, yes, they do need to keep him on a little bit better leash on stuff like that.
So this is I don't understand how Vance would be worse than Pence. I don't see any.
Maybe
Vance
the most effective speaker we've seen from the right in the past 30 years.
Vance has pantsed everybody who's come at him. Like Vance is number one. You having Vance on the ticket is what'll open the door and allowed them to go stolen valor on walls.
Yep.
Because it creates the comparison and the decision making. I mean, so Pence was garbage.
Pence was to bring in the evangelical vote, and
now,
he was about the most boring person on the planet.
Now Trump has genuine elected bona fides to show the evangelical vote that if you put me in office, I will deliver on your priorities. So, yeah. Vance is in bed with big tech. I mean,
okay.
Yeah. He worked with Thiel. I get this. People are saying he had him vote on FISA reauthorization. It got reauthorized by everybody. Mike Johnson said he wasn't going to support it and then flipped as soon as he was speaker. There's things we can be upset with, but there's also things we have to prioritize right now, which is.
And he's the VP. He's not the president. I take Vance over most of the other picks, except for maybe Vivek.
But you could make the same argument about Vivek on being owned by Teal and big
Yeah,
tech as
because
anybody,
they're
which is
essentially the same person.
which is what's crazy to me. I see a lot of people who trash Vance, and then they're like, "We should have had Vivek." I was like, they were like college roommates, best friends, and worked for the same dude. Like,
Yeah.
how is one owned lock stock by big tech and the other's like a true warrior for the populist conservatism? It's like I feel like you're leaving out a lot of stuff. You're seeing what you want, and I don't know. I think Vance proved by winning solidly in Ohio that he can speak to the groups that are needed to win in the current year for the conservative side. Yeah, I've seen like there's some people who said that wanted Carson because they thought he was the only one that maybe would have. I was like, but Carson doesn't do anything.
Carson brings no energy to the
Yeah,
ticket. I mean,
Carson's like
Carson is basically Pence again, except he's much better than Pence, but he is just as low energy and boring as Pence.
yeah, yeah. Thiel has
And I
his
like Carson.
Thiel does have his own agenda. They all have their own agenda. What I think is clear is that Trump, more than anybody can, upends the oligarch agenda better than anybody. Now, you can make your peace with that and support his ticket with Vance, or you'll get Kamala, and that's going to be so much better for you. This is why I hate
Yeah.
people who are like principled. Like I can't, like I'm a never like we had David French did his this here's my principled reason for voting for Kamala over Trump
Which
article.
isn't even just abstaining from voting. It's literally voting for the enemy. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
we've talked about it. Like the American system, you can hate it, you can say that there's better ways to do it, but is de facto a two-party system. You have two, it's a binary choice. You have two candidates who can win. Only two. RFK Jr. is not sniffing winning, so it's just people voting
he's
for
polling
him.
at 3% right now.
If you pull, like, depending on who you would, if you leaned toward the left and voted for RFK Jr., you are pulling support from Kamala. If you lean right and you vote for RFK Jr., you're pulling support from Trump. I've seen polls that show both sides, that depending on the state, he'll pull from more from Trump in some states and more from Kamala in others. So but point being, RFK Jr. is not going to win. Not even going to get close. Maybe gets 4 or 5% in one or two states at most.
Well, and at this point, he's begging both sides for a cabinet position. He already talked to Trump about it weeks ago, and then in this last week, he went to the Harris campaign and is begging for a cabinet position within the Harris campaign, or the Harris presidency if it were to happen. So he even knows he's toast. He's trying to get whatever he can in exchange for him dropping out at this point.
The famous not South Simpsons
Simpsons.
Treehouse of Horror with Kang. Go ahead, vote. You throw your vote away. What are you going to vote? Independent? Yeah. So, there are allegedly rumors that Trump is bringing back Corey Lewandowski to help with some of the messaging. Um, I would be more inclined if he brought, once he's done serving his sentence, if he was out in time, Bannon to help, because Bannon has more of the populist instincts than I think even Lewandowski. I mean,
Yeah.
Lewandowski was up to some shenanigans that we don't need to discuss with a certain governor of a Dakota.
Right.
That as soon as he comes back on board is going to be brought up, and I don't feel like we even need to deal with it. Although it would be interesting if they start attacking him for that, and that opens the door to questions about Kamala's political origins.
Well, and the interesting thing about what has gone on in the past week, especially with people on the right apparently attacking Vance, is that seems to be coming all from Kellyanne Conway. From everything I've heard,
Which
she was
happened
against him,
soon,
and she is the one who is putting out all of the leaks about, well, Trump's just going to dump him, blah blah blah. it's all one portion of the campaign. The campaign is fighting itself at a time where it really can't be doing that. Conway needs to shut the hell up and just go along with what has been chosen.
I mean, as much as you complain about Vance, he had one of my favorite lines of this morning's political talk shows, and it might have been rehearsed and planned, but giving Kamala Harris control over inflation policy is like giving Jeffrey Epstein control over human trafficking.
Well, let's talk about the inflation real
Yep.
quick, because
Yep.
we had the report that inflation is at 2.9%.
When you take out food and rent,
Yeah, but
which is, yeah.
what I really have liked is the weight gain analogy that's been all over the place. I mean, people saw that, and that is the easiest, simplest way to explain it. So, it was basically, I used to weigh 200 pounds. In 2020, I gained 5 pounds, so inflation up 5%. In 2021, I gained 11 pounds. That's up another 11%. In 2022, I gained 9 pounds, and in 2023, I gained 6 pounds. But in 2024, I've only gained 3 pounds. Where does that leave you?
Lizzo.
Your weight gain has gone down in 2024, but now you weigh 234 pounds instead of the 200 you started at.
Yeah, all we've done is decrease the rate of increase.
Correct.
Yeah, which,
Inflation is still growing at 3% on top of all of the other percentages that we've had over the past few years. Prices will not come down when your inflation is still growing. I mean, so them celebrating 2.9% is absolutely insane because you're still growing inflation. Just because the rate of growth has gone down does not mean anything is improving. It means you're up another 3% on top of the other 30% that you were already at. And again, like you said, we're not even counting food or other basic necessities. They just take those out. It's kind of like their, crime rates are down or murder rates are down. It's like, okay, but you're not reporting half of the counties in the country, especially the blue counties and blue cities. You just stopped reporting it. So of course it looks like it's down because you just don't report anything and say, yeah, well, since we didn't get that information, it looks a hell of a lot better for us.
it is. I don't like. Yeah, this is why I still think the fundamentals support Trump winning solidly. Is that if you go back and look at presidential polling, Jimmy Carter was up on Reagan in August of 1980. Michael Dukakis was up on Bush in August of 1988. We had, I think McCain. He was in some polls, slightly above at the end of July, beginning of August of Obama in 2008 before he got wiped out. Romney was polling ahead of Obama in the beginning of August 2012. And of course, we know from that Trump was polling behind Clinton and Biden by 8 to 10 points in August.
Yeah, with Clinton, it was a 0% chance
Yeah.
of winning the presidency going into the day.
Yeah, to use there is no inflation in Ba Sing Se. It's it's crazy. People feel it though. It's the average person. Like, nobody that you go to that does any kind of grocery shopping can look at what they're getting in their bag for $60 now and feel good about it.
Yeah, this is where the Twitter bubbles are bad for everybody because nobody's looking at what actual people are doing. Twitter is a horrible place for this kind of stuff. Because if you look at Twitter, it's just a constant battle of, well, Kamala's winning or Trump's winning, and none of it is taking reality into the equation.
And on X, Twitter, whatever you call it, there's also the engagement fallacy, which is that you've got people who are farming engagement for the cash, that they earn as part of the partner program with X.
Although I do find it hilarious that the Krasensteins keep putting out polls on who's going to win, and even their left-wing followers can't get Kamala up to like 20% in the polls. It's it's always like 90% Trump wins.
So this is a weird thing. So Eric was like, I'm less optimistic considering the TikTok block and inevitable Taylor Swift endorsement. I don't know that Taylor Swift's dropping the endorsement. I
Well,
feel like
and
it would have. Remember, early voting starts in like 2 weeks in some places.
there's a whole contingent of Swifties, whatever they're called, Swifties for Trump. I mean, she likes money. I don't know that she's going to come out against a large portion of her fan base that has gone Swifties for Trump.
I feel like, yeah, Taylor Swift might have done the calculation like I came out strong previously. I'm going with the rock level analysis here.
Everybody knows where she sits.
Yeah, you know where I am, but if I come out and make a point of it, I lose money. I don't gain anything. Like what did the street cred from 2020 get her? Nothing.
Right.
It's
Well,
yeah.
I mean, she is at the top of where she's going to be. All she can do is bring herself down.
Yeah, she's
mean,
busy trying to
she's
negotiate the
doing
prenup
concerts
with
and
Travis
theaters
Kelce.
and stuff. Yeah.
Allegedly, that's what's the only thing holding up their announcing their, this would be a fucking royal wedding level event here, apparently.
Ridiculous.
The NFL will sponsor it.
Of course.
Uh,
And by the way, since we're trying to get this show kind of up and running, we would appreciate it if you could like and share out the stream so that we can get some more eyes on
yeah,
this show on Sunday mornings.
And if Taylor Swift somehow hears this show, she's welcome to come on to do an interview on her political stances on anything, because I'm sure that wouldn't be bad at all. So.
Yeah, we can have Kelsey on and Butker and just let them argue it out and just sit back and watch.
Yeah, it's yeah, she got an open invitation. I don't think, we may not agree, but you're welcome on the show and can promote it to any of your fans. Let's see, what were like, I think we've covered the inflation and Comrade Kamala's stupid idea to try to make it worse.
Well, let's hit on price control a little bit, though, because it is absolutely a communist ideal. What happens with price controls is suddenly you get a very limited supply. So things become much harder to get because you are pricing it in a way that companies just cannot get the supply out there, and people are not able to then get the item. And that's how you get breadlines in Venezuela. I mean, if the grocery store has a 1.3% profit margin, and you tell the grocery store you cannot raise the price on this, but the supplier is saying, well, it's going to cost us this much more to get that to your grocery store, or we just can't do it. The grocery store then says, okay, well, I guess we're going out of business. So the government then has to step in and tell the supplier, yeah, we're fixing the prices on this. You can't raise that price. So then the supplier starts feeling the pressure of the government, and it just goes up the chain until the government is running every single portion of getting that item from here to the grocery store.
Yeah,
that's where you lose all supply, and the demand goes skyrocketing because nobody can find said item, and boom, you're in breadlines.
Yeah, Elon Musk retweeted a very effective explanation of how this process would work out.
I didn't see that one.
You didn't see that one? Here,
No.
Let me bring it up, because it was actually
probably
done
a little bit more detailed than the way I just explained it, I guess.
Yeah, let's see. Here we go. This is all right. Let me share. See if this makes it nice and big. Okay.
Yeah, let me change the layout. Okay.
All right. Let me try to embiggen it again.
Enhance.
Enlarge. All right. Here's people need to stop overreacting about Kamala's plan to reduce food inflation as it would lead to communism, mass starvation, end of America. I worked in M&A in the food industry. Here's a step-by-step summary of what would actually happen. The government announces grocery retailers aren't allowed to raise prices. Two, grocery stores which operate on a 1 to 2 net margin can't survive if their suppliers raise prices. So the government announces that food producers, Kraft, Heinz, etc., also aren't allowed to raise prices. Not all grocery stores are created equal. Stores in lower income areas make less money than those in higher income areas. So, because stores in lower income areas aren't able to cover overhead, remember, even if the wholesale costs are fixed, their labors, utilities, insurance, and other operating expenses aren't. Grocery chains start to shut down. Food deserts in rural areas and low income urban areas become worse. Meanwhile, margins for food producers are quickly eroding. Their primary costs, ingredients, energy, labor, aren't fixed, and their shrinking gross profits leave less cash flow available to cover overhead and reinvest in capacity. Grocery chains have finite shelf space and start to repurpose the stores to sell more non-price controlled items, from nutrition supplements to kitchenware. Your local Kroger or Safeway will start to look and feel like a Walmart. Food producers will then stop making products with lower margin, and grocery chains will start competing with each other to secure inventory. Since they can't compete by offering stronger prices, they compete on things like payment terms, like I'll pay you up front, I'll pay you ahead. Small grocery chains start to shut down entirely or get sold to larger ones like Kroger, in addition to not being able to cover fixed costs. A major reason for this is due to prioritizing larger customers, so those ones close. Smaller food producers, which typically sell via distributors, start to go out of business. Supply chains break down, lines start forming outside grocery stores every morning, cities assign police officers to patrol store parking lots, and food producers draft contingency plans to assign armed escorts to delivery trucks. Federal government announces a program to issue block grants for states to purchase and operate the shuttered grocery stores. The USDA also seizes closed down production facilities. Government announces prices for all key food products, corn, wheat, cattle, are now also fixed to stop profiteers from gouging the now government run food operation. Shockingly, the government struggles to operate one of the most complex industries on the planet, and the entire food supply chain starts imploding. 13, communism, mass starvation, and the end of America quickly ensue. Hey, wait a second.
Yeah,
It's
which kind of sounded like what I said.
Yeah, that's the more yeah, that's the just like very detailed step by step for you to see, because that guy, he laid out every step in the chain, because
Right.
yeah, where it would break down.
Which we've seen in our lifetimes in multiple countries. Venezuela being a very good example of it.
Well, I think that's where this guy could pull it exactly. That's exactly the sequence of events that happened in Venezuela, and it's
Then you're
eerie.
hunting rats in the dumpsters so that you've got some meat to eat.
Well, I mean, if you go in Demolition Man, as long as the burger is prepared properly, he'll still eat it. Yeah, Brahma properly gave the too long didn't read version.
I guess.
TLDR. Yeah. But but the fact that Elon Musk, and I know Ackerman was another guy, like tweeting out like, how is this going to work, Kamala? Who's like, this is a 1 to 2%, because anybody who knows business knows grocery chains have some of the worst margins of any business,
Yeah.
which is why there was a funny comeback. Mark Cuban, who's all in on Kamala this election, like was promoting
Moron.
this, and someone like just responded to him, "Hey, Mark, if I came on whatchamacallit, Shark Tank,
Shark
and
Tank.
I told you I had a business with 1 to 2% margins, would you invest?"
Right.
Which the answer is no. They would never invest on something that only generated 2% margins. Grocery stores are actually a terrible business model, but they're necessary, so they exist because you can make money on it, but you have to make money by doing volume.
Volume.
Like a small, like there's a reason why if you go to a bodega in New York or a small grocery store, the prices are 4 times what you might find at a Kroger or a Publix, because they can't afford to operate on a 2% margin at that volume, so they have to price it higher to have an actual genuine margin for their
Well,
items that they
hell,
sell.
look at Whole Foods. And you're going to pay a premium if you want the organic version of everything. If all you're going to sell is the more expensive product, yeah, your price is going to be higher. And it doesn't matter who the distributor is. Your price is going to be higher because you're doing things in a way that doesn't mass produce the same way.
And Davina's bringing up something. There has been an awful lot of accidents in our food production.
Yeah, over the last few
Over the last
years,
few years, there's been fires, destruction. Not even
a
talking about.
plane crashing into one of them.
We're not even talking about the whole thing with the avian flu, where they have been murdering
Yeah,
millions of our livestock because, and this is what crazy to me. The USDA protocol is if in even if they're warehoused in separate buildings on site, if a chicken tests positive for avian flu, the entire
kill everything.
facility's population of chickens have to be culled. Not just the one in the facility they were stored at,
Yeah,
the entire thing. So like, if Purdue has a mass chicken egg facility or whatever it is in warehouse A, and they have warehouse A, B, C, and D. If warehouse A is where the bird tests positive, A, B, and C, D, they're all murdered. They're all culled. And it always, it seemed like, egg prices were starting to drop down and things were getting back to normal. And then bam, they started culling. It was in some of our biggest producing factories. They're like, oh no, look what tested positive. Got to cull this whole herd. Prices
yep.
go right back up. I mean, if you're into depopulation conspiracy, it fits perfectly.
Or if you're paying attention that Bill Gates owns most of the farmland in this country now, and he wants you to eat bugs, that kind of tells you a little bit too.
Yeah. So this is yes, southern home raised chickens don't get the bird flu. It's amazing
No, you
how
just have city regulations saying you can't have home raised chickens, depending on where you're at.
yep, and or yeah, so that's why you got to get some land, get yourself a coop. And that's the other thing. The tests aren't even they're as accurate sometimes. They're using basically a bird version of what we were using for the Rona, which had a very high rate of false positives. If they get
Yeah.
a positive, do they worry about a false positive and do a secondary test? No.
No, just kill them all.
Just call the hurt and call them. That's what it. So, yeah, there's price controls are a terrible idea. They've worked nowhere. They've been. The idea of price gouging is, I think, has been proven in court laughably false. Like every time they try to genuinely prosecute someone for price gouging, it ends up getting like, oh, like it's not that they were the supplier that was selling them the good raised the price.
The only times that true price gouging happens is when you've got a natural disaster, say a hurricane coming in, and suddenly somebody raises the cost of bottled water to $45 a bottle because there's no water available. That's price gouging. It's not, I mean, what we're seeing right now, you'd have to believe that every major CEO in every organization in this country got together in a smoky room and decided, yep, we're going to raise the prices on everything that we sell. That's not what's happening. We all see the inflation. That's what's causing this. It's not some backroom deal saying, yeah, we're going to gouge the hell out of everybody.
Now,
Doesn't make sense.
that is different than where I do think that there is a very big capitalist loophole, which is called profiteering, which is a different concept because profiteering tends to come from government money, where a supplier, for instance, to the US military will have specs for body armor that are,
Right.
for and they'll skimp on, like, say a ceramic plate has to be this thick to be effective, and they'll skimp and they'll like make it maybe a quarter of that thickness, but they'll still get paid for the full contract because then it gets them a higher margin. That's profiteering. That's where, and that's a different thing. And I think that one tends to happen all the time because government contracts tend to get awarded not always based on merit, but on cronyism. Biden is especially good at it, and Kamala's does it the same way. This and it's not a one side thing, because it happened in the Bush administration with Cheney and Halliburton getting no bid contracts at exorbitant rates to do services in Iraq. Now, some people argued at the time that, well, Halliburton was the only company that did the specific thing. Well, I'm going to give you an idea of how they do this in government to make it look that way. And this is, if you've ever worked, because I grew, you work in DC, around DC, or you grow up here, you know how they work. When they have a job listing, job listings for federal employment have to be made public. Like, they have to be open listings. It's one of the requirements. So what they do is they have a job listing and people apply for it, and they run it through an algorithm, and they give each resume a score based on how well it qualifies for the job listing, and the people with the highest score get to interview for it. So what they'll do is, and I've known several people where they've done this, the agency that is looking to hire someone permanently will have them come in and they'll say, give me your resume. And they get the resume, and the person making the job listing literally will make the job listing based on the person they want to hire's resume, knowing that means that when he submits it to the open listing, he will score 100%, because everything he has is exactly what the job listing is looking for. But it'll satisfy the public requirement. So what they did for something like Halliburton, Halliburton was the only one that could do what they were asking. Yeah, because Halliburton told them these are the things we can do. And they specifically said, well, this is what they need. And they listed only the things that Halliburton could do, even though that wasn't required. There's lots of ways to rig it.
Yeah, you cater it directly to the company that you want to get the contract.
And the Uniparty does it on both sides. This isn't just something that Democrats do. It's a terrible problem. It's a real problem. Profiteering that way is real. Price gouging in the open market, it tends to be a smoke and rears BS thing. It is, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
if there's a natural disaster that occurs, or for instance, a giant refinery on the East Coast has a fire and is offline, and it produces, I think this happened in California, right? They have one refinery that produces most of the West Coast's, refined gasoline. Mm-hmm. And it had a fire a couple of years ago, and then gasoline prices shot up, and I was like, well, what do you think's going to happen? Like, we're not allowed to build refineries anymore. So when you have all of your supply in one zone, it goes offline and you have to start importing from other areas. They're going to take advantage. They'll be like, well, if you want us to go into California and send you our gas, I've already got buyers who will pay me $50 a barrel for it. You're going to have to pay me $80 to go out, to cancel that contract and go do it.
Yeah.
That's just market. That's not gouging.
That's supply and demand.
Yeah.
Which is completely different than what we're seeing with inflation. Inflation is ultimately what it is your dollar isn't worth what it was 4 years ago. So it may still be called a dollar, but it is not worth what it was 4 years ago, when your dollar could buy something at this price. I mean, the price goes up, but it's really the effectiveness of your dollar going down is a better way to look at it. So, one of the other things that we wanted to get to was the FBI is sure making this whole assassination attempt thing look like they're covering up a lot. I mean, we saw the pictures of them spraying off the roof of the building that the assassin was on.
Oh, and then we found out that blood.
Yeah. Then we found out that they cremated him like 10 days after the event.
And they did it like nobody knew what happened. We also find out now officially that it wasn't a SWAT man. It was a local law enforcement officer who took the shot. That was, I think, confirmed in some reports. It wasn't a Secret Service counter sniper.
Yeah. At this point, there is so much crazy information going out there that you can't tell what is true. I mean, we've had a ton of people go to the actual site and look over everything. I mean, I think the FBI is still claiming and Secret Service is still claiming there was only 3 shooters total. And there's a lot of shots and a lot of different people claiming that they took shots. It's very hard to figure out what is actually going on, and the fact that they're not putting out any information and that they're just destroying things like power washing the roof. Have you ever heard of any police or FBI investigation where they go out and do the biohazard cleanup themselves?
No.
Typically, you've got a company, or you have to hire a company to clean up the biohazard afterwards. Like if there's if somebody decided to take their own life in their own house, you know, you're on the hook for paying the bill to get that cleanup. It's the police don't just come in and say, "Yeah, we'll take care of that." The FBI doesn't typically go out and power wash the roof of a building. They don't typically let somebody who was, possibly encouraged to do this. They don't let his body just be cremated within a few days of the event without anybody knowing.
Nope.
There are now reports that some of the people that had him in their sights said he looked drugged out of his mind, which maybe, I don't know. But who's giving him those drugs? What kind of drugs was he on? All of this stuff needs to be answered. And we're getting nothing. And the news has just made this disappear. When's the last time you heard anything about the assassination attempt that only happened like a month ago?
Yep. I mean, I think, let's see. The assassination attempt led right into the convention, which led right into that Sunday when we were on our show when it dropped that Biden
Stepping down.
stepped down. So they completely like nerfed. That story became. We didn't say it, but somebody did.
Yeah.
I mean, there was an interesting answer, for all the people who were talking about Teal when he was on Rogan's show,
Mm-hmm.
where he was like, "Oh, I don't think the CIA is doing that." But he kind of, if you listen closely to the way he answered, it was more like, "I don't think the CIA would be doing that officially because the bureaucracy wouldn't let them do it." So, he was kind of hinting at here's the other ways they would be doing that kind of thing now in 2024.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a guy who has very deep ties to the intelligence community, who probably knows more than he will ever publicly say, still trying to tell people, yeah, there's things going on. You should, if like they wouldn't do MK Ultra, they have new things they can do now.
Yeah. We do it completely differently than the past ways we've done it.
Yeah, because the way he said it was, as soon as something becomes bureaucratized, that's when it ends. Like he was bringing up, like as soon as the Bush administration put out official memos on like how many times you can waterboard a person within a period to make it legal, and all, he's like, then it kind of stopped because anyone was like, but it didn't mean that they didn't come up with new things that weren't covered in the memo.
Yeah. We just don't waterboard.
Yeah, so when it's like, is it MK Ultra? And it's like, no, it's not MK Ultra. The way because MK Ultra was regulated now on how they could do it. It's got new things that we can do.
It's kind of like, Fink saying we're going to get away from DEI because people know what DEI is now. So it's no longer just code words for things. It's gotten into the mainstream. So we're going to get rid of DEI by just changing it to something else. Changing it to bridge or any other number of things. Once something is out there in the mainstream, they're just going to switch tactics, even though the tactic is still essentially the same thing. They're just going to hide it a little bit more and rename it something else.
Yeah, so Davina was mentioning the stories about testing plutonium radiation experiments on poor people and covering up for decades just to test the effectiveness of radiation. Yeah, they did. I mean, the government, for all these people who want to trust the government with everything, the government has a bad history of not caring when they want to do something.
Yeah, because why would they care?
which is interesting to me that in the same conversation you can have with like a black political thought leader, where they will bring up the Tuskegee experiments as an example of how wronged they were historically, and not take away from that this is a good reason for us to not blindly trust government.
Yeah.
Like the takeaway from the Tuskegee experiments isn't it's isn't just a terrible like thing that it was the fact that the government had an agenda item and were perfectly willing to have human sacrifices to do it,
Yeah.
and that nothing's
Not
changed
much
about
different
that.
than some Germans.
I mean, they have we think that Tuskegee were so far removed from that, but if you join the U.S. military, they can put anything they want in you as a test. They do it. They'll give you experimental vaccines,
Every
drugs.
vaccine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if you say anything about it, you are drummed out. You are
If you are
dishonorably
going
discharged.
overseas, they're going to inject you with everything they've got before you actually get on the boat or on the plane.
I know, for years people thought Gulf War syndrome was related to burn pits, but now there's a lot of talk that it was related to some experimental vaccines that they gave people before they deployed to protect them against regional illnesses.
Yep.
It is not, the takeaway is just government is not your friend. Government has core tasks they should be accomplishing, and when they get beyond that, they are an agent of nefarious action against you. Like,
Well, in reality, our government was designed to work for us. This government does not do that, and it hasn't for, you know, a very, very long time. The federal government, immediately decided that it had to grow and be something that it was never designed to be. And the fact that they are supposed to work for you, and when do you ever feel like they are working on your behalf as a citizen of this country, is the problem.
low spec over here. I was deployable anywhere in the world in 24 hours. Yep, I got all the vaccines. It was, it's, it is, it is something I wish people would understand. That I am not an unrealistic like anarcho capitalist person who thinks that somehow everything will magically work out without some kind of government to protect individual rights. But at the same time, we did initially constrain the government to try to like the all those powers not specifically enumerated are not the domain of the federal government.
Right.
It amazes me because people are like, well, the founders weren't clear. The hell they weren't. They were super clear. Like, we have
The power
stretched
resides in the states.
yeah, we like the interstate commerce clause has been stretched beyond any recognition to give the there's two clauses that have come up that they will use to justify the extreme growth of the federal government, which is one to promote the general welfare, which literally was just a frilly statement that shouldn't have any actual authoritative power from it, but people use it. That, oh well, if it's promoting the general welfare, it's a perfectly acceptable federal task. And the second is they've used the interstate commerce clause to basically say that any kind of action that could conceivably, theoretically, in any way be related to interstate commerce makes things the purview of the federal government.
Yeah.
There were some decisions in the 60s where they actually, and maybe they were the right decisions to make morally, which was related to civil rights actions, but the logic was there's Heinz ketchup on the table of the diner. Therefore, this diner engages in interstate commerce. Therefore, the federal government has a right to regulate it.
And just so we're being clear, as far as vaccines go, I mean, yeah, I have been vaccinated for a lot of stuff, not the most recent stuff, but as a kid, we all got the MMR, the booster, we got vaccinated against measles, all that kind of stuff. it has eradicated a lot in the Western world. So I do believe in a lot of good vaccines, but I don't believe in the experimental ones that they just keep trying to tell us, no, these are for your own good, that kind of thing, especially if there's mRNA involved in it.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, there's a
don't.
reason we're seeing more measles popping up, and it's because we've got so many people coming into this country illegally from places where they do not vaccinate against
Do
stuff
you
like
know
that.
that if I was sending my child to public school, as I think Southern Bell pointed out earlier, you've got a list a mile long of all the inoculations that are required to attend public school.
Right.
If you are a migrant, a refugee, whatever class of person who's come over our border and gets sent to a zone and sent to public school, do you think they have to get inoculated? No, they don't.
No.
They let them right in. And uh, y- uh,
And you're
yeah,
seeing the rise of eradicated
yeah.
diseases in the West coming
And
back.
yeah, HPV is another one. That was one of, before the mRNA one, the newest vaccine that had hit the market was the HPV one.
Right.
And they made a giant push to get that. Like, what was hilarious is my wife was outside of the window of age when that came out, that it was supposed to be given. I think you had to be under 30 is where, because they want to give it to you when you're earlier. And she was like, and the doctor, her woman doctor, was like, oh, you should get this. And she's like, but it says it's not effective over 30. She's like, oh, they're just saying that. You should still get it.
Right.
Like, why should I get it if it doesn't do anything? Well,
Money.
it's gonna be good for everybody. How?
Money is the answer
And the
every
doctor
time.
got so annoyed at the question, was just like, no, I'm just, it's just good for everybody if everybody gets it. Vaccines work best when everybody gets it. And she's like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's them trying to use the term herd immunity in a way that it's not meant to be used. So,
Yep.
what else happened this week?
We had
Paulina or Anna Paulina Luna is hot as hell. We had that happen,
I think
and
that was such a stupid thing to suck up time even discussing.
it
I
is,
mean,
but
we've
it
got
also
Tim.
shows that conservatives still know what a woman is. I think that was kind of the point. Is conservatives know what a good-looking woman is.
I saw. I mean, I did. The story did come out that Trump brought in Tulsi to help his debate prep against Kamala, and I thought that's a good one. If anybody knows how to jabber and twist the knife, it's Tulsi Gabbard. Let's
Yep.
see. Bad Take Bojan. My son is doing mRNA research for cancer as part of his biochemistry doctoral program. It's really scary, the potential for good and evil. I'm not saying which way I think the potential went initially, but I'm going to say it probably wasn't good.
When even the creator of it has come out and said, "Yeah, this isn't good."
We're
I think you
getting,
can figure out which way we're going.
and just in time for 2024, there is that one. Although I do feel confident, just like last time when they were going to go with this one, that because of the way it's transmitted and the population it primarily affects, when they start asking questions of how it got to children and dogs, that the disease will suddenly disappear
Suddenly
and not be
disappear
talked
again.
about again.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened last time. They were trying to make monkeypox a thing.
Yep.
It was, and by the way, it was amazing how with monkeypox, even though for the vid we had to all be shut down, and we'd have governors like Tim Walz ordering us shot with pepper bullet rounds if we were on our porch. We had to, because we had to stay inside so much. But with the monkeypox, they were like, "Do we want to stop the gay pride parades? No. Do we
No.
want to
But then
stop the
you saw the
bath?
super spreader events every time there is a pride event.
Yeah, should the bathhouses be closed? No. Why would we do that? Just
Yeah.
saying.
We know how it spread. Yeah, as you said, the key thing to watch is why and how are kids and dogs getting it? And the second that, like you said, the second that question starts getting asked again, this will disappear. I,
Yeah, so
they
I
just
don't.
don't have the next manufactured thing ready. So we'll take another shot with this one. See if
I
it
would
catches
still
on
say
this time.
that they'll. My guess is if they were going to pull one, it would still be a bird flu variant, since they've been laying the groundwork with culling those herds for 2 years. That that would be the one that they would pull that rabbit out of their hat.
Yeah, and we'll probably have mad cow disease come back somewhat soon, so that they can start culling those herds a little bit more.
Yeah, wasn't that supposed to wipe out all the cows by now, allegedly? No,
Yeah,
you know
kind of
why
like
that didn't
kind of like
happen?
man-made climate change was supposed to have us underwater at this point.
Yeah, that was a big problem. It was a big problem in England because I remember I was not allowed to give blood when I came back in the early 2000s because I had gone to England and I'd had a burger, and they're like, "Did you eat beef while you were in England? Yeah. Was it English beef? I would guess. It
Probably.
was at a restaurant. It was English, and it was a pub. Yeah. They're like, sorry, you can't give blood. And I'm like, I can't give blood, no, because your blood could be tainted. Now, what's funny is they allow people, they don't screen for the HIV, but whatever.
Yeah,
um,
that one's insane.
yeah, well, this is a quick bird flu, swine flu, Ebola, mad cow, monkeypox, the coof. Like,
It's
they're,
amazing how a new thing arrives every 4 years, almost like it's aligned with elections.
yeah,
Do you want
so
to bring up the polls for this week,
yeah,
and
we've got, I mean,
we'll check
they're
that before we head out?
doing their thing like they've been doing, but they're starting. It's even in what they've got. They have. I mean, they've.
I tend to agree with the main pollster from Rasmussen, who's basically saying they are manipulating the crap out of every one of these polls.
Yeah, Rasmussen has done a couple now where they've been fairly consistent, where Trump is around plus 3 or 4.
And just I watch. Um, Rasmussen has a YouTube channel, and you can go and they will break out exactly how they did their polls, how they're trying to weigh it correctly. I mean, Rasmussen is not CBS or ABC or Fox, where they've got money from another thing. Rasmussen has to actually be correct, or their polling is useless. So I tend to lean more towards them, not just because it's showing Trump up, but because I think they're actually trying to poll in the correct way. Um, and I
Yeah,
think we will
one of
see another bump after the DNC for Kamala, but this whole honeymoon is just about over, if it's not already over.
well, thanks for being here, Eric. I
Thanks, Eric.
appreciate you watching the show. Yeah, the so Southern Bell's like, did they Rasmussen jump on the interactive polls case? What they've been going at, and this is something Rich Barris of the People's Pundit, who is also another pollster who's very open and transparent about how they do it. They've been talking about what's called response bias, which
Yeah.
is who's willing to answer the phone and do these polls.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at, and what you have to do is you have to unwind the response bias. You have to make sure you're not oversampling urban zones. You have to make sure you're not oversampling. And this is a different than just the pure oversampling question. It's about the art of taking polls, which is if you are trying to create an actual representative population of a state, for instance, states are not geographic monoliths. You know that a certain, like Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, it all roads through Pennsylvania. If you're polling Pennsylvania, you know that Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are your population centers,
Yep.
but they only represent a certain percentage of the electorate. So when you're doing your poll, you want to make sure that in terms of your representative sample, you are not getting more responses out of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh versus Scranton. Was it what's the side? Scranton's Ohio. What's the other side? Whatever, Wilkes-Barre. The parts of Pennsylvania that are rural or factory. So when you get response bias, you are going to find that people, like in Philadelphia, the urban wine mom contingent is super excited to jump on a poll and tell you that they're going to be voting for Kamala.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
and people with landlines.
yeah, and if you just run the poll and you get, in this case, like CBS did here, 3,258 responses from people who are likely voters, meaning they're registered, but you're not making, checking to make sure, like, out of that 3,000, if you're doing Pennsylvania, should 40% of it be coming from Philadelphia? Probably. Where's the rest of the vote coming from? Like, but if you're
Right.
finding that out of the 3,065 or 70% are coming from Philly and Pittsburgh, you're getting a response bias. People there are more excited to answer. Whereas people who support Trump know that maybe they don't want to give a poll and say they're doing that. And to Rasmussen and Rich Barris's credit, they said that earlier in the year, like especially around that first debate window, there was a response bias in favor of Trump
Yep.
because people who were on the left side were less enthusiastic about responding to polls because they didn't want to be on record saying they would support Joe Biden given how he was going. So they inflate in a lot of those polls. They said Trump's support was probably inflated because of response bias by 2 or 3 points, and they still published their polls because that they only had the responses they had, but they put in publicly the caveat that we don't think this is as accurate as it will be as we get closer to crunch time. There's a response bias.
Yeah.
So now
And
we're seeing the honeymoon end, and this is starting to drop. Like, we go from those crazy outlier ones where they had Harris like up 5, 6, 4, 5. Like, we're starting Rasmussen as Trump +4. The newest CBS one, which was a larger sample, only has Harris up 3.
right.
I haven't dug into that one yet to see, but there's I mean, we talked about this as soon as Harris got the nomination. It was like, watch the trend line; they're gonna push her,
Hmm.
and Real Clear Politics is gonna shift the average in her favor, and that's exactly what they've been doing.
And you can make a poll say anything you want. By, I mean, as you were saying, the response bias, you can ask the questions a certain way. You can only call certain people and know what kind of response you're going to get. And you can make the polls say whatever you want them to say.
Yeah. So, for instance, like Davina, if I was doing that on a poll, what I could do as my question would be, it's been reported that Donald Trump has engaged in domestic violence. Do you believe that Donald Trump engaged in domestic violence less than once, more than once, or so often that it couldn't be reported?
Right.
Well,
There's no
less.
option for he didn't do it.
Yeah. So right there, if I frame the question that way and I give you those as the answer, you're going to be like, "Oh, less than once." And then I would be reported a majority of people responded that they believe that Donald Trump engaged in domestic violence at least once.
Yeah.
You can, and there's a lot of ways you can. Polling is an art where you can shift it to however you want. If how you phrase the question, the answers you give as options, and who you sample can give you results that you want, or you can find genuine answers if you want. Like, if the election was held today, would you support Kamala Harris, the Vice Democratic nominee for president, or Donald Trump, the Republican nominee for president?
Well, and
And then if you get an actual representative sample, that's going to give you genuine numbers.
look at what we do have in all these polls. For the last, what, 18 days, 20 days, I mean, for the most part, they only went with registered voters, all the major pollsters, up until these last two polls that came out, Rasmussen and CBS. I mean, all of these are registered voters, not likely voters, except for Survey USA. And that's from the beginning of August. There was a desert of polls from the time that she took the nomination, supposed nomination, to just recently. I mean, they just stopped reporting for the most part for a couple weeks. So even when she was supposed to be getting a bump, they just weren't showing much.
Yep.
They were going with the numbers that they had for weeks before.
Yep. And yeah, here's our famous line as quoted by Davina and Silvar, which is lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Yep.
And to use the meme format, that would be corporate wants me to find the difference between these two pictures. There is no difference.
Right.
So, um, that's why I know we've talked about looking at betting markets, and they've moved back to even.
Yep.
Uh, Poly market, the largest betting market in the world, has moved back to 49.49. It had been Kamala up,
Like
but
54 to
yeah,
48.
yeah, but she opened her mouth and gave an economic speech, and that immediately dropped her back down.
Yeah, within hours, the betting market shifted on her, saying, "Nope, she's a freaking communist." And I mean, even the betting markets, as much as I like to look at those, um, and as much as we've touted them in the past, because that's actual, people putting their money where their mouth is, it's still influenced by everything you're
Polling,
seeing and hearing.
yeah.
I mean, when
If you drop,
everything says Kamala is the greatest thing that's ever happened to this country, I mean, it's still going to influence it to a degree.
what, yeah. So here's a fun one. Look at this day in polling history. Right, August 18th, 2020. Biden in the Real Clear Politics average was up 7.6%.
Right.
In this day in history, Clinton was up 5.8%.
And that's historically oversampling Democrats. That's
Yeah,
why,
so
in my mind, I always have about a 5 point swing towards the Republicans, because A, Republicans aren't as likely to take the polls, and B, they're not as likely to be freely opening their mouths about what they're going to actually vote.
I'm gonna try because I think the most appropriate polling is the Carter Reagan one. So
See if you can find it.
yeah, I'm trying. Let's see.
It's a little while ago.
Yeah, Gallup usually has a history. Um oh, here we go. This is perfect.
Okay.
All right, stop share screen.
There we are.
All right.
Add.
So fun, Gallup has been doing polling for a long time. They're one of the. So this one is 1980 Carter's position versus Reagan in polling. This is late October.
Yeah.
Carter was up 8. Then by late up, so this is late October registered voter up 8. Late October Gallup likely voter up 3. Now remember, late October means this is before early voting. This was like right before the election was supposed to happen. No, everybody knew all the data that was going to come in was in. Actual result: Reagan by 10.
Yeah.
Popular vote for Bush versus Gore. Bush late October up 3 with registered voters, up 5 in the popular vote. Gore wins by 0.5 in the popular vote. So polling, that was an example of
Well,
going
that
the
shows
other
about
direction.
that 5 point bias, either direction.
Yeah, so usually the last time I saw polling and even this undersample was McCain in 2008. The ass handing that he got was actually undersampled. Like people thought he was going to lose less bad than he did. It had undersampled his ass whooping. So don't worry too. Like the polls are for the most part they are designed to
They're a
move,
snapshot.
and they're designed to move public perception more
Yes.
than even you can tell like the genuine like Rasmussen are people who are doing it where they only get paid by accuracy. Trafalgar, Rasmussen, they're both very accurate in the Trump era. So I would
Right.
be,
Because
if
they have changed their sampling style to try to actually reflect the populace. because they don't get paid if they're not accurate. What's the point of having a polling system if you're getting the wrong answer every single time? And they've been pretty accurate for the past few elections.
Yeah, Trafalgar was the one who, what is it? Spearheaded the who's your neighbor going to vote for in 2016.
Right.
Now they had kind of caught on to that, and so they've been shifting some of their polling. So this is the last Trafalgar polling, which was done August 10th. This was for North, like as an example of North Carolina. Like solidly, 3 points is a solid lead. So they have North Carolina for Trump. I think Arizona is showing it tightening, but still with Trump slightly in the lead with Kennedy. This is all the ones where they have all 5 prospective candidates, including the 3 Cornel West, Jill Stein, Robert Kennedy.
Yeah.
Main ones off there. It's a tight race, but the fundamentals tend to, like here in Nevada, he's up higher in Nevada than Arizona, which to me actually makes sense if you look at the demographics, because Arizona has been inundated with a lot of California expats.
Yep.
And who want to bring their voting with them, which is whatever. I'm leaving California because the taxes are too high and all these problems. What are you going to do in Arizona? Vote for the same things.
Right.
Because at least I'll be dead by the time it gets really bad. So I would say if you want to see accurate polling, I would look to what Trafalgar, like here's Pennsylvania on August 10th. This one is again where you've got a higher component to Kennedy, and you've got, like, here to me, if you're still undecided, Trump tends to win those at a usually 60-40, 70-30 split.
Yeah,
in his elections.
Especially if you're dealing with an incumbent, essentially.
Yeah, what this
if
tells
you haven't decided on the incumbent, then you're typically going to go towards the challenger.
So Trump is already up, and if the undecideds, which make up 4%, break majority him, this would look like probably a 48-49 to 47 and change victory.
Especially in a state where she is anti-fracking, anti-oil, anti-coal.
Yeah, so I would say if you want, Rasmussen and Trafalgar are probably the polling groups if you want to actually look to see what they're releasing to get better, more accurate results.
But ultimately, we just look at the polls because, it's just a snapshot of what's happening this week. And since we try to do a week in politics, that is something that we can actually bring up every week and just kind of monitor what it looks like is happening in the country.
Yep.
I still don't trust most polls either way, whether they're showing Trump up or Kamala up, but it does give you an idea of what the sense is across the country. Whether that ends up being true, who knows? I mean, we've got a few months till that, but what I will say is, during the Musk-Trump interview thing, which was much better than, say, having your VP candidate interview your presidential candidate, and that being the only interview done in 30 days. There was the DDoS attack, and I would say to everybody out there, if you've got early voting, go early vote. Don't play the typical, Republican game of I only vote on election day. We can fix that later. But if Elon Musk and Twitter can have a DDoS attack that takes them 40 minutes to resolve, what are the chances that the federal government or a local county government is going to be able to repel a DDoS attack on election day? Which I fully expect will likely happen, that somebody will try to do something to that effect on election day, because that's when Republicans generally go to vote. Go get your vote in early this time, because You want it banked and counted, as early as you can. Don't let anything slip to that last day if you can help it. It's a change from the typical mentality of Republicans, and I know that a lot of people are saying, well, if I do that, then that just gives them, the information on the margin they need to cheat. If we get the early votes in, and it's enough of them, you erase the margin that's capable of being, cheated. So get
Talked
in and
about it
get your
all the
vote done.
time. Got to win beyond the margin of cheat. 3%.
Yeah.
Anything over 3, they're not going to do it.
But if you show up on election day and they're having voting machine issues or a DDoS attack or anything like that, then your vote's definitely gone.
Here's what I want you to do: bank your vote early, and then spend the rest of the time between that day and election day
Getting everybody else to go vote too.
trying to get some of your lower motivated friends who are politically aligned to vote you.
Exactly.
Here's the dirty little secret is that even in a presidential election, we get 60 to 70% turnout of registered voters at most. So in some years, it's even more depressed. If the people,
which is why the last election is so ridiculous in the numbers.
Yeah, so if you know people who like, what difference does it make? We'll be like, look, well, do me a favor. Just do me this, do it for me. Can you if you're not going to vote
take
anyway,
the 5 minutes to go do it, because
I'll drive you.
Early voting, it's not like there's lines.
I'll drive you to it. Take the page out of the left playbook. Like, if they're elderly, if it's your grandma or grandpa and they're like, well, I can't go, I'll take you, grandma, and then we can go out to lunch and you can tell me about everything that's been happening. Take one for the team if that's not something you wanted to do. Plus, you should go hang out with your grandma anyway. But be the Scott Pressler to your local zone. Get people who aren't motivated. If you know hunters, gun owners, if you've got a gun owner, they are naturally inclined by disposition to support positions that would make them want to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Get them to the polls.
An awesome one. They say the machines are offline, but it's amazing when we had that issue, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that basically shut down the airline system. The
Arizona
the update that got
election.
rolled, that update that got rolled in and junked everything. It was amazing how many counties were reporting that their voting systems were affected for something that's not online and not getting automatic updates. So I don't believe the offline thing, and we've seen tons of people, in court basically claiming that they can hack those machines in a matter of seconds. So I don't know. But we are at our hour and a half on Sunday morning. It's now moved to noon my time, and you guys are already in the afternoon. So, Chad, what do you got coming up this week?
Well, we got, I think, whether it's gaming or a Mad Stravaganza birthday, something on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then
Tuesday is Mad Cheese Mo's birthday.
Yep. And then Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Ascendant Art podcast channel, Ascendant Art here on YouTube. We're going to be hanging out, talking about whatever. I don't know what it'll be this week. Maybe do some music trivia. Mad missed the one that would have been perfect for him, so that was perfect. I'm going to make fun of him for doing that.
And I don't see a massive number of views on that one yet.
It's already in the 60s, which 60? Is actually high. They usually pop in the weekdays. Yeah. So for a weekend, that's actually one of the higher performers.
Yeah. It was gross. Boy band lyrics.
Because it was boy band lyrics. Yep. So yeah, that's and then Slender, my co-host, has also started a branch channel for us called Ascendant Gaming, where we're putting gaming clips. So if you like watching, especially chained together clips where we're yelling at each other, trying to work together, you can go to that channel. So we're trying to do all sorts of growth for our group.
Sorry, loud car going by. And that channel is actually Ascendant Arcade.
Ascendant Arcade. That's right. That's right. We renamed it at your suggestion.
Yeah. taking notes from the producer, right?
That's what you
Um,
as we do.
what do I got this week? No Christian panel this week. We did have one last Wednesday on Carrie Smith's channel, so go check that one out. It was a pretty good talk. Monday Night Meltdown on Comics Division's channel, gaming Tuesday night on my channel. And Slender did put in a link into the chat for the Ascendant Arcade channel, so go check that out and sub. Thursday, we've got Thursday night on comics, and then back on your channel for Friday night, and then back here Sunday. So still staying busy, but I've got a few nights off every week now, so that's been nice. And yesterday I went and saw the Blue Angels with the family. They were performing here in Colorado Springs, so we got to watch that, and that was fun. I held the new granddaughter for about 2.5 hours because nobody else wanted to deal with her, I guess. But that was pretty much the only reason I was there. So yeah, we'll be back here next Sunday. We could use a little bit more word of mouth if anybody can spread the show a little bit more. And I'm down to needing 25 subs for monetization on this channel. So if you can spread the word, that would be fantastic. But I hope everybody has a great Sunday, and we will see you next time. Take it easy, everybody. Later.
Bye.